So the CJ-8 is a report in OCSS that you are able to generate to get you your BJS statistics for the year. Now with the CJ-8, it is a pretty extensive report and there's a lot of different things to go into with it. We do have the CJ-8 2021 in there now for you guys to be able to run. If you do not have access to that report, please contact our support desk and we can get that enabled for you. I've told the guys at the support desk that they'll be getting some calls and emails regarding that, and they're aware of the situation, how to handle that. So we're going to begin by running the CJ-8 2020. Due to the network connectivity, I'm not going to go through the full generation process. We're going to go mostly over how to configure it to run for you. You'll notice that the CJ-8 2021 and CJ-8 2021 question 10 are separate reports. The question 10 report is very intensive and takes just as long as the CJ-8 to run, even though it is more questions. So I just request that you guys please be patient when generating these reports. They are very resource intensive on the system, so just give them time. It will eventually generate, and if you're having trouble, it might be that you need to wait until later when there's less user activity. They're that resource intensive, so please keep that in mind. So to run the CJ-8, you will go to your reports section from your home screen. So on the home screen, under utilities, there will be reports. The CJ-8 2021 is the report that you're going to want to generate. And once you are ready, you'll hit run. So this is the first step in generating this report. So the dates you'll run it for are the 1st of last year to the end of last year. We can have these parameters default for you to make it a little easier. You'll just need to contact our support desk to get those enabled for you. The first thing you'll do after the start and end date is select the supervision types that you are reporting on. One thing with the CJ-8 is this is entirely how your agency wants to report information. So there are some supervision types that you will have that other agencies will not report on. A lot of this report and where the confusion in my experience comes in is what do they want from you? Well, it's what you're reporting on. So however you want to report is what you'll select. So for instance, in my experience, most people do not do pretrial supervision. So things like bond, PSIs, any pretrial house arrest, those sort of supervisions will not be reported on. So I'm going to come through here and I'll select my community control general. I can do drug court, judicial release. I'm going to leave out the investigations and pretrial. So I'm going to be running strictly on community control or post-sentence supervisions. So once again, this is what your agency is reporting on. So if you want to report on bonds, that is well and fine. You just need to make sure that you know that when you're doing your statistics. So the first thing that most people run into that kind of confuses them is what to select for each question. So just to reiterate, this is what your agency applies to these classifications. So what does your agency have as sentencings without incarcerations? So when I come to question A and I click no value selected, I'm brought with my agency's current sentencing types. So I need to select for my agency which is a probation without incarceration. What were they sentenced to? So direct to probation, I can say intensive, and then probation with incarceration, revocation with jail, and split sentence do not apply to probation without incarceration, so I do not select them. I'll hit continue, and then for question B is sentencings with incarcerations. So I would click where it says no value selected, and I select the sentencings that would have the offender being incarcerated. And once again, these are how your agency classifies these. This is entirely how you guys define your sentencing types. If you do not have something in that applies, don't put anything in that field. You'll see that when we get to the second part with question 3, with termination statuses. This is where most people get confused. One thing with the CJ-8 and especially this report in OCSS is you can only select an option one time per question. So I waited until question 3 because it's a better example with more options for us to select. So I'm going to hit 3B. So termination, get back here. So termination, incarcerated with new sentence. So for your agency, if an offender was terminated, what was their incarcerated with new sentence termination type? So when I select there, I'm presented with my agency's termination statuses. So how were they terminated? I'm able to come here and select which ones apply. You can only select the option one time per question. So since I selected revoked with prison, I'm not able to select that for any other options in 3, all the way down to 3H, which is unknown. So you select which ones apply, but you can only use them one time. So termination, incarcerated with revocation without new sentence. I come here, I've already selected revoked prison to count towards that. So I don't have anything that I would put there. We will automatically calculate successful termination, so you will not need to select any successful types. So as I come down, termination, incarcerated to receive treatment. Is there anything that applies in here? No. So I move on to the next one. Incarcerated, not known. Nothing in there as of right now. So we can go all the way down. So absconder, discharge, warrant, or detainer. Let's see if we have anything there. We can say told inactive is discharged to a warrant or detainer, just depending on how my agency defines that termination status. So for 3F, death, I can select death as my termination type, and that is what I will count for this. Once again, you can see that a lot of these are going to be blank because my agency doesn't have any termination types that we define to fit that classification. And once again, just to reiterate and kind of drive the point home, you can only select an option once per question. So you can only select a termination status to apply to one part of question 3. So I can get down to other discharges here, or other discharges. So we can do neutral, new charge. Actually, I'm going to go and assign that to another one, and unsuccessful. So once I realize that I need to go and add the new sentence, I can do new charge up here, and it's only counted once towards 3B1. So once again, just to really drive that point home, you can only select an option once per question. So when you get down to question 14, you'll notice that this is asking sentencings again. This is asking about your agency sentencings. We already answered those in question 2, but since this is a new question, we can select those options again and where they apply. So direct sentence to probation for 14A, direct to probation. Go back down to question 14, split sentence. Select that option one time. Back down to 14, suspended execution of sentence to incarceration. So I can say, all right, do any of these apply? Probation with incarceration, and we'll have that. Suspended imposition of sentence, and then I have other sentencings. So I can say this is intensive and revocation to jail, for example. So once again, remember, only select the option one time. We'll go over question 10 here in a moment. Once you generate this report, and I'm going to try and generate and keep talking here, so hopefully this will generate for us. If it doesn't, I apologize. We're currently working through those network connectivity issues. So when you generate this report and it successfully opens, you'll be presented with our options here. So my actual results for the test agency obviously aren't going to be that great since we don't have many offenders in there. But one thing I want to go over is the unknowns. You will have unknowns based off of what you've selected. These are offenders who do not apply to the options that you've selected. So here we see I have 2 unknowns. I don't have any discharges here, but it will calculate any unknowns for those for our agency. I have created a separate report called the CJ-8 unknowns that you are able to run, and it will give you any offender for every question but 10 that we return, who those offenders are, give you their OCSS ID, and then you'll be able to go and correct those offenders. So when we run that, we'll see that we have to fill out the same parameters that we did previously. So I'm going to go and enter these. And I'm just going to do this so we can look at question 2 here. So what did I select for question 2? Select my supervision types. Directed probation. Select these. So I'm just going to do this so we can get the unknowns for question 2 since we did have them. So I'm going to run this and it will actually give me which offenders for each question 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, and 14, what the unknowns were. So when we go to my report here for question 2, there's 2 unknowns. Here are my 2 unknowns. I'm able to go and correct their sentencing. So for the sentencing, to correct that, we'll open up one of our offenders here. It will be in their cases, there's a sentencing field here. You'll click on that and add their sentencing and their sentencing date. So we'll say he was 1/1/21 and accept. Now, when I run this report for this offender, even though those aren't the right OCSS IDs, they will be brought into that report and they will be applied correctly. Question 3 will go over the termination. So that will be the supervision period termination. These all should be correct unless people in your agency are hitting cancel when they are finally closing out an offender. To correct these, you'll go to the supervision section and you'll have to close the supervision period. If you need help going through and correcting the unknowns for question 3, please contact our support desk. They will be able to help you. Question 6, 7, and 8, these all go over demographic information. So let's look at questions 6, 7, and 8 on our report. So question 6 is their gender. That's just on the face sheet. You guys should all be familiar with how to set the gender on the face sheet. Same with question 7. This is the race defined on the face sheet. We did run into, in Medina working with Heather, I'm sure she's on this call, if they have a race that we are not capturing, I think the example was a biracial individual, you can put that in the not knowns or additional categories when you're entering through the BJS portal. So just keep that in mind. Question 8 is regarding felony or misdemeanor offenders. This is the highest level of offense for that offender. So if we go to question 8 unknowns, these are offenders who do not have their highest offense listed. So we'll go to 424743. So the reason that he is not being returned is he has a case that has a blank offense. We will need to make sure that the offenses are getting added. That's going to be a big part of the unknowns you're fixing. Question 8 and question 10 are usually the ones that need to be fixed the most. These are usually users not entering the offenses. I mean, just full honesty, that's usually what I've run into. So you'll need to go in for question 8 and correct these offenses. You'll need to define the felony and the degree to get the highest offense for their period of supervision. So that will be question 8's corrections. I'm going to go back to my reports, and that essentially covers the CJ-8. So you're going to need to define for your agency what classification goes where, the supervision types you're running on, and then we can default the dates. If you have sorted this out and you know which ones you want to run for every question, please let us know and we can get those set up for you. Now for question 10, this in front of question 8 is the one that requires the most corrections. So this is asking for class of offense. So how many offenders had a domestic violence? Had their most serious offenses domestic violence, a sex offense, other violent, property offense, drug law, driving while intoxicated, another traffic offense, or other. Any not knowns will be offenders who do not have an offense that has a classification. So this is where you're going to need to do some legwork to get this corrected. So I'm going to show you what we need to get corrected here. So administrators in your agency, or if you are the administrator, will have access to this offense charges data set. Maintenance form, sorry. This will list out all of your agency's offenses. So when you're adding offenses through the offense lookup for an offender, just when you're creating an offense, these are the options that are available to you. If you click on one of these options, you'll see that it has the code, description, and then the class. This is the field that the CJ-8 is looking for. So for the classification of abducted is other. Now, if we go to aggravated burglary, we see that the class is blank. We will need to define the class in order for that to be counted on the CJ-8. This is the one that usually throws the most people off. I'm sure there are some users in here who have run it previously, where you have to go and define these for all of the offense charges in your agency. It is a little bit time consuming. It's a little tedious, but that's how we're going to be able to get question 10. If these classes are not defined, we can't calculate question 10 in OCSS. So we'll have to do this individually. So for aggravated burglary, we define the class. Aggravated murder, we'll say this is a violent offense. Aggravated trafficking in drugs, we just come from the drop down and we select what class it is. Kidnapping, other. Theft, other. So you define these for each of your charges. Now, if you go to define the class for your charges and you do not see any options, on the home screen, there is an offense classes. If we go to the offense classes, I've populated mine, but to add offense classes, it is the top left 3 bar menu, new offense class. I recommend using the classes that the CJ-8 defines just to save yourself some headache. So that would be domestic violence, drug law, DUI, other traffic, other violent, property, and sex offenses. If you want to have these just in front of you, you can go to the reports and you can use this as your kind of directive to get those classes. So just to reiterate, we need to have the offense classes in our offense classes maintenance form. So that'll be on the home screen, offense classes. You'll define what offense classes your agency has. I recommend using the CJ-8s. And then in the offense charges, you will need to go and define a class for all of your charges. Now, some of you will have 200, 300 charges. That is time consuming, but in order to get question 10, it has to be done. Unfortunately, there's no way around it, and you will have to do it individually. If you do not have access, please contact your administrator and let our support staff know, and they can get that enabled for you. So I'm going to go back to my report section here, and now we are going to run question 10. When I hit run, I get a document settings window that is similar to the one I generated for the CJ-8. We define our dates again. We select the same supervision types we did for the CJ-8. And then for each question, so for domestic violence classes, I select for my agency's offense classes which ones I want. And just like we did before, so if I select sex offenses here, I cannot select sex offenses anywhere else. So this is actually a domestic violence. So I'll uncheck sex offenses, sex offense, other violent, property offense, drug law violation, DUI, other traffic, and other offenses. Now with this, I've worked with some of you in the past and you have different classifications, different offense classes. That is entirely fine. You just select which offense classes go with each question. They don't have to be the same as the CJ-8, but you can, once again, only select them one time. So if I had, let's say for offense classes, for example, I had minor sex offenses. Now, when I come to my CJ-8, I can select both sex offenses and minor sex offenses for B10. So you're able to add more than one option per question, but you cannot select it anywhere else. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to select these again and we'll generate it just to show you. Now, once again, I'm using a test agency. We don't have many offenders in here, but it's more the process of how to generate that I want to go through. So once again, we come and we select which offense classes are assigned where. And just to really drive it home, you'll hear me say it a lot. You can only select one of these options one time for that question. So once we hit generate, once again, this is going to take some time. This is a very big data set. It is very resource intensive. This question 10 and the CJ-8 will take a good amount of time to generate. So just keep that in mind. You will get unknowns. I almost guarantee somebody in your agency will have an unknown in there. We do have the question 10 unknowns, just like we did for the CJ-8, but this one is more resource intensive than both data sets. So there is a chance that it will not run. Due to our connection issues that we're having this morning, I don't want to tempt fate and break the whole system for you guys this morning. So I am going to show you just how to set it up. Is the same process that you did for question 10. That will give you a list of offenders that are unknown. Just like we had for our CJ-8 unknowns that I showed you previously, it will show you in this same format. You're able to go in and correct that offender's offenses. Now, if you have any trouble running the question 10 unknowns, please contact us. We may have to do it from the database. Just to, I'll keep reiterating, these are very resource intensive. They are very big. There is a lot of information that we are combing through for this to work. So I'm just asking you guys be patient when you are generating these. Okay, so that is the broad overview of the CJ-8. If you guys do not have this enabled, please contact our support desk, send in an email with your name and just who is going to be running it. If it is not you, we will get all of these enabled for you. And remember, the big thing that you guys will most likely have to do is configure your offense charges with a class. It is, once again, it is time consuming, but once it's done, it's done. You won't have to do it next year. Okay, I'm going to open it up for questions. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'd like to answer one at a time and not have everybody talking over each other. So if you could answer any questions or have any questions, just put them in the chat so I can review them and I'll answer them now. So I'll have you guys go ahead if you have any questions. If not, you are free to go and you can send us an email just to enable this for you if it is not already. I'll stick around here if anybody has any questions, but once again, if you don't, you are free to go. That covers most of it. Stick around. If you guys, it looks like a lot of people are leaving and not many questions. So if you do want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that is also fine. We will send you the video recording, Leah. We can send that out to you.